Many people know the line, "When Gaston was a lad, he ate 4 dozen eggs every morning to help him get large. And now that he's grown, he eats 5 dozen
So
eggs."
I'm roughly the size of
Now, I don't know if you know this, but that's a lot of eggs. People make fun of me for buying 5 dozen eggs at a time, but at least I don't eat them all on the same day. Now, it is possible that Gaston was exaggerating, or at least doesn't know what the word dozen means, especially considering when he's talking about eating 4 dozen eggs, he eats half a dozen eggs, and when he's talking about eating 5 dozen eggs, LaFoe attempts to throw 17 eggs in the air, which is just slightly less than 60. But let's say Gaston actually knows what dozen means, and he is eating 5 dozen eggs a day. What does that do to a person? Now, I'm not a biologist, or a doctor, or someone that pays attention to what the human body needs in terms of nutrients, so this is probably not going to be the most accurate, but I'm going to try, well, not my best per se, but an amount. But just because I'm trying doesn't mean you should be taking anything I say as health advice. Just quick disclaimer there. Now, there's a lot of different sizes of egg, but we're gonna go with the large egg because that seems to be the default these days, and Gaston's a man's man. He's not going to be eating any puny medium or small eggs. Let's start with calories, since that's a pretty basic thing people look at when trying to figure out if what you're eating is healthy. One large egg is around 75 calories. Eat 59 more, and you're at 4,500 calories. Now, that's a lot of calories, but to see whether it's too many or just the right amount, we need to find out how big Gaston is. According to Google, Gaston is 6 foot and 200 pounds. Though the website that says he's 200 pounds also says he's 8 feet tall, which I think would make him a stick. So these numbers definitely feel like guesswork, but I'm not about to do some pixel measurements to actually figure that out. That's not what this is about. Now, there's these websites that can give you how many calories you should be eating based on your height, weight, and age. And according to the page of 8 foot tall Gaston, he's 25 years old, which works fine for me, though it turns out it doesn't matter that much. According to these sites, a 6 foot tall, 200-pound man should be getting about 3,000 calories a day. Gaston, again, is eating 4,500 calories. Now, that is a lot more than what these websites say Gaston should be consuming, but again, we're using likely inaccurate measurements of Gaston, and from the little research I, a man who has no idea what he's talking about, did, eating 4,500 calories could be reasonable if you're very active, which I would assume Gaston is. So, yeah, eating 4,500 calories a day might be too much, but let's assume Gaston should be consuming that much and see if he'll have other health issues instead. After all, eggs are more than just a pile of calories. They also have a bunch of other nutrient type stuff in them, just like most food. But the thing about nutrients is that too much is a bad thing. That's what the "too" part of too much means. Now, eggs are high in protein. That's why I eat them, that's probably why most people eat them, and that's definitely why Gaston eats them. He's gotta build that muscle somehow. And if you assume the 4,500 calories Gaston is consuming is the correct number of calories, then you can use that to figure out how much protein he should be getting. Apparently, you should be getting between 10% and 35% of your calories from protein. And apparently, each gram of protein is 4 calories. So, we take the 4,500 calories, multiply by 10% and 35%, and then divide each of those numbers by 4 to get the number of grams of protein Gaston should be consuming. According to that math, Gaston should be getting between 112.5 and 393.75 grams of protein a day. A large egg has around 6 grams of protein. So the 60 eggs Gaston is eating are about 360 grams of protein, which not only is in the range of grams of protein he should be getting, but is towards the high side, which is good considering we're assuming he wants to get big and is pretty active. This works out surprisingly well. Interestingly though, if you take the weight and height from before to figure out how much protein Gaston should be getting, it only comes to 72 grams, which is a lot less than what he's consuming, but that's a minor detail. Another thing eggs have is a lot of sodium. Now, the FDA recommends we intake 2,300 milligrams of sodium a day. But, I mean, let's be reasonable here. I'm an American, and no self-respecting American eats the recommended amount of sodium. We consume more. Apparently, on average, 1,100 milligrams more, coming up to 3,400 milligrams. Gaston, on the other hand, is eating 800 more milligrams than that. Now, because of how averages work, it's probably pretty likely that there are people who consume 4,200 milligrams of sodium a day and are living well enough. So, while it doesn't seem great, it is potentially fine. But because that is a lot of sodium, Gaston might be getting some heart issues in his future. But sodium probably isn't going to be the main source of those heart problems because of the next thing on our list: cholesterol. Eggs have a lot of cholesterol. A large egg has about 200 milligrams of cholesterol, which means 5 dozen large eggs have about 12,000 milligrams of cholesterol. That's enough to remove the zeros and just start calling it grams. In general, apparently, you're supposed to have an absolute max of 300 milligrams of cholesterol a day, which, is just 40 times less than what Gaston has been eating. That is so little cholesterol, it barely even makes a dent in how much Gaston is eating. You know what 12 grams minus 300 milligrams rounded to the nearest gram is? 12 grams. Like I said, consuming too much cholesterol is bad for your heart. According to one source, every extra 300 milligrams increases your risk for cardiovascular disease by 17%. So, and I'm pretty sure I'm doing the math wrong here, but that's a minor detail, Gaston has about a 663% chance of having cardiovascular disease. That is just a little concerning. Now, I could probably continue, and I'm assuming Gaston is getting the nutrients he needs that aren't in eggs from somewhere else, because if his entire diet is eggs and beer, then we have other issues, but I'm gonna stop there. I like eggs. For a time, I made the effort to make 3 eggs for lunch every day. Turns out even that's not very healthy, and it's probably a good thing I was too lazy to make lunch a lot of days, besides the fact that I didn't eat lunch those days. But at least I'm not Gaston. Gaston should have died long before Beauty and the Beast even started, and if he hadn't fallen off a cliff to his death by the end, his heart probably would have stopped from all the excitement. So maybe 5 dozen eggs a day will just kill you instead of making you roughly the size of a barge.
When I was a lad, I ate 4 dozen eggs every morning to help me get large.